welcome us back here to the Eliminate the Gap podcast here this week. Hey, looking forward to a great week this week, right, Eric?
Absolutely. And a lot of our episodes so far have really touched in some way on the pandemic. And this is really when we're going to begin to kind of make a move back into normal positive youth development. And this week's guest is Shoroke Zedan. She's former director of the Technical Vocation and Education Training, TVET, as known in the international development field, in Egypt. And she's based in Cairo, and we're very excited to have her on this morning. And we are going to be doing a first. We will be attempting to do a simulcast on the Global 5 network on LinkedIn. So we might have some interaction, some questions and all of that. So it should be interesting and hopefully a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of feedback from our last episode. As we expected, this is starting to grow a little bit, and we've gotten more and more people checking out episodes. And the last one we did on education really got people stirred up a little bit. What have you been hearing? And tell us a little bit about kind of what's coming up for you all with emerging from the pandemic.
Yeah, so in regards to that education piece, again, we want to thank Troy Washington for coming on, and since that's actually happened, Troy has actually been assigned to be an assistant principal at a school actually going to be fairly close. So look at ETG. Hey, come on, you want to move up? Come on, ETG, baby.
Get promoted by coming on the show.
So yeah, that actually just happened, and one of the big things here, as we talk about, whatever it is in our country, is they're going to be two different sides, and it's just one thing we're doing here is just, we're opening up the dialogue, we're expanding the dialogue. It's all about thought, and again, it's not about we all have to agree. We just have to kind of look and understand the other side of things in a lot of cases. And there are folks that are okay and comfortable with, hey, they're ready at this point. We've been in this thing for just a year, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to just go back to normalcy as best we can. And then there's others that still have some fears. And again, we understand that, and that's to be expected. Exactly. One of the things that actually has come up here in the DC metro area, where we have one of the largest school systems in the nation in Fairfax County, the majority of the schools around here have come out with statements within the last week or two since our last podcast, talking about in the fall, 5 days a week, we're going back to normalcy as best we can. And folks, there are going to be options for folks that don't want to come back still, but we're going back to regular 5-day work week in regards to school, 5 days education for students. So that's very encouraging for me, at least.
Sure. And just a reminder, and I'm sure nobody watching these podcasts or listening are coming to us for their news. But anything we say here, still check out the CDC guidelines. Still check out your local health department and what they're recommending. Because I saw earlier this week, it looked like that maybe schools are going to within a 3-foot distance, where that's considered safe instead of 6 feet social distance. And so I know there's just a lot of things varying out there as we do continue to come through this and whatnot, that you just continue to check out your own local guidelines there. We do not pretend to be experts in this area. We're just reflecting and sharing things that we hear, hopefully not perpetuating any rumors or anything like that. So today's guest, we're pretty excited. As mentioned, Shoroke Zedan will join us here in a moment. We're going to be talking about gender and girls' involvement and engagement in programming and in all kinds of walks of life. So gender and inclusion. I know she particularly Shoroke is passionate about entrepreneurship and how young women can build their skills and enter the and create their own wealth and really contribute to their community in that way. And the fact that Shoroke's been able to do this successfully throughout the Middle East and Northern Africa should be quite fascinating to hear. And
yeah, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And so we'll certainly hear about what some of the challenges have been and what they still are, but more importantly, how things are changing and how young girls are beginning to thrive in that region and around the world. All right. Well, as promised, today's episode is going to focus on, and of course, as soon as I do this, I have to cough. Excuse me. Today's episode is going to be about gender and inclusion and entrepreneurship and really a robust kind of conversation about these issues, particularly with maybe an emphasis, at least initially, in the Middle East and Northern Africa, but then globally, really. I mean, and we'll have others joining us in a unique format for us. And you'll see people pop on potentially as the conversation continues this morning. But Shoroke Zedan is our guest this morning, and she is formerly director of the Technical Vocation and Education Training, also known in our field as TVET in Egypt. And so she is actually based in Cairo right now. She's been going back and forth between there and London, but she happens to be in Cairo, and we're very grateful to have her here this morning. So welcome, Shoroke, to Eliminate the Gap podcast.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I'm looking forward to this. It's been quite some time.
It has.
Since we've worked together, right?
Absolutely. So for just to state out there, Shoroke and I worked together off and on for, 5-6 years in a big project in Egypt in the mid 2000s with a big strategy that engaged a lot of young people, particularly those in the vocational ed track within Egypt. And we worked throughout the country as we went down up the River Nile to various communities, and we did quite a bit and got to know each other, respect each other's work, and then since then, Shoroke's really blown up in her career, and so I'd love to just kind of briefly get a sense from our time running that project and doing project management with the Equip 2 project in Cairo to kind of where you are now, with Global 5 and getting the, platform set up. There's a lot that's happened in between there. So just kind of fill us in and again, touching on the passion that you have for these areas.
I'm sure you remember that when we first started the Community Youth Mapping Program out here in Egypt, we had a lot of resistance from a lot of people, be it the community itself, the government, different stakeholders, and yet we somehow managed, to instill certain development foundations into the few communities that we began with. And we did something that was at the time very, very rare, which was taking girls overseas to foreign lands and having them, take the leadership and introduce all the initiatives that were taking place in Egypt and later on expanded to other development countries. And I think that things began to evolve more towards the importance of having youth become a strong entity whereby their voices need to be heard across different platforms, in particular in terms of changes in certain policies and certain practices, And with the SDG agenda taking precedence across the globe, it became even more visible for us as a developing nation and for many other developing nations, whereby, you know, it was time for youth to step forward, and it was time for us to sort of give the flag to this to the next generation, and see what they have in mind, and see how we can support the different pathways that they want to take. So one of the great things I think that took place was when Egypt took leadership and developed the World Youth Forum, for example.
Yeah.
And this was an incredible initiative, and you know, it gave youth a sense of ownership to something that was different, and that was initiated in a very different perspective and manner. And it also allowed us as Middle Easterns or Africans, however you want to tag us, to show other youth across the world, our culture, our beliefs, start changing the varied norms that were embedded due to political history and lack of awareness of the region as a whole. So the World Youth Forum was a major milestone for Egypt, definitely. And every year, there was a theme, and the theme was really based on how the world was moving, or what is the current trends that are taking place. And at the end, it was always it was set up in a manner that it became a platform for policy leaders and for the youth to identify what is it that they want the government to work on, or what is it that they feel is the most important things that need to take place over the course of a year or more to meet specific SDG goals. Um, and so with the youth at the forefront, education started to surface, especially TVET education, or technical and vocational education and training. And this is because there has been this realization that this is where the majority of youth is embedded, that the only way moving forward in terms of social and economic development, it is by supporting a certain sector, or supporting this very, very important sector, and supporting it in a format where they are also working to improve their own communities. And I think that community youth mapping at that time, when we first began in 2004, okay, it was really all about that. It was about getting the youth to become involved in all the strategic decisions that are being taken by the government within their communities. But no one really grasped this idea until where we are today. So it was, you know, something, it was very interesting for me, and it was very, it was really amazing to see how everyone started talking about things that we have been calling for the longest time. It's over a decade now. And I'm sure the same took place in certain areas or within certain communities in the States and other developed countries. But for Egypt itself, this was different. It was different because you have the political will, and you have the political support, and you have suddenly international organizations are working towards one movement or one strategic vision. Youth were being heard. It became evident that no economic development or social development will take place unless you start participating and becoming an active member of your community, regardless of your background, regardless of your social and religious status. And at the same time, you started seeing this change happening. So SMEs became at the forefront, entrepreneurship education became at the forefront, and entrepreneurship education became something whereby you are trying to fill in the gap that the current education system is missing, but working towards reforming. But time and time is of essence, as they say. So you embed life skills and you start embedding things that you are always looking for. And that was great to have. And then, you're walking and you're changing all these trends, and suddenly everyone is working together, and we get hit with a major economic collapse, and other things started to surface, which was mainly gender and women empowerment. Yes, we talk about women empowerment and we talk about inclusion all the time, but nothing really takes effect. It's just talk, as we are all very much aware of that. And today, it's not the same anymore. Today, it's about women empowerment because the economic collapse made everybody and all societies and all communities to realize the importance of the role of gender and of inclusion and everything that we do, starting with leadership, with making sure that the youth are able to properly understand what is meant by gender inclusion and women empowerment. It's not about taking their place, but it's about showing enough respect to women to take into consideration the principles, and to take into consideration the changes that are taking place socially because of their involvement, even if it was behind the scenes. So a group of colleagues with myself, we decided to establish the Global 5 Network, because we felt that most of the time, all we have been looking at is certain definitions that are coming from a research perspective and not a practitioner's point
absolutely.
of view.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of what this podcast is intended to be is not, while we will bring on research and introduce and discuss research, it's a practitioner's audience that we're trying to reach here and have conversations with. So I appreciate you doing that. I just wanted to reset real quick, Shoroke, for folks that have joined and that are listening in other ways. We're going to have continue this conversation a little bit more directly with Shoroke, and then there will be an opportunity here in a moment to then open it up for some other questions. And if you have questions right now, feel free to toss it in the chat. I can raise them that way if you don't want to ask that yourself. So just we'll continue on with this here, and then we'll have an opportunity to engage some other folks. So I appreciate you pivoting to Global 5. Continue on, just to continue to enlighten folks what it is, and more importantly, how they can join to be a part of your movement.
So the idea behind the network was, bringing everyone and anyone that is interested in gender inclusion, entrepreneurship, and youth development into one network or one platform where they can share their lessons learned or get feedback or get suggestions. And it's really just a network. It's free of charge. We are always looking for interesting topics. We're looking to invite people to, you know, like we did with you, to set precedents over something specific. And I think this podcast is something very interesting for all of us. And the five of us have different backgrounds. We come from different countries. So we pretty much represent the entire globe. And at the moment we have Maria and Dia, who have joined. And each one of us complements the other in one way or the other. Each one of us is able to tap into their communities, be it SMEs or entrepreneurs or young people. Each one of us has this ability through the network or through the type of work that we are each interested in or that we're each doing. And it's interesting to see how things are shaping up. We began, shall we just say, a soft opening last November during the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and we co-hosted a conference with the International Council for Small Business, who were very much keen to support womenpreneurs during this past period. And we were amazed at the depth and the reach of our different networks, and how many women and young people and other professionals were so interested and eager to share their experience and to discuss, I will say, the SDG agenda on in different perspectives. And it was always focused on women and the role of women, the challenges, how they've overcome these challenges. And it was refreshing to see CEOs and policymakers and government leaders so willing to participate and talk about all these different initiatives that are taking place from so many different countries. Where are we heading? It's going to be tough times for the future. Definitely, it's going to be very, very tough, because now comes the realization of the imperative role that the private sector has to play in youth development and the economic and social recovery of each country. And we need to be a lot more strategic, as in we need to have a long-term vision to where we want to be in no longer 5 years, but more towards 10 and 20 years time. We need to be creative in how we want to engage these communities of private sector businesses in terms of supporting youth, and how are we going to get the youth to move forward and take leadership of something like that. So it's not going to be easy, and it's going to require, we're not talking I do my thing, you do your thing anymore. It's
right.
one objective, one aim.
That's incredible. And just to even just ponder for a moment, even 5 years ago, the likelihood of you all connecting in this way, virtually, online, to not only come together and maybe have some discussion around some of these issues, but then to form a network and then already be, co-hosting conferences and moving the dialogue and engaging so many people. I mean, it's just amazing what's even just possible now. And so much of whether it's the pandemic, whether it's been economic challenges throughout the world, there's been silver linings that have come through these things. And you mentioned one, right? Just that all of a sudden there was this level setting that was happening in countries and communities that then enabled, or not enabled, that's wrong, recognized that particularly girls, young women had the opportunity and are needed to contribute economically, have through entrepreneurship and through other things. And so there became this, out of necessity, became finally this realization of this whole host of folks that need to contribute. It's just, again, a silver lining through all of this. One of the things that I'm curious about, and Delmar and I were talking about earlier, was what are some of the sectors? I'm sure all the sectors are open, and we want young women to consider those, but what are some of the sectors you see that particularly that young women are thriving in?
Well, I think that one of the key sectors, I would say, would be the agricultural sector. This is definitely very, very much led by women, although not many like to admit that, but it's true. Especially when you are looking at the SMEs factor into that. You also have technology. You also, of course, the healthcare sector, without any doubt, is also one of the sectors that where women are leading. However, now we have new trends coming out. We have now women who are very much engaged in occupations of relevance to, for example, building and construction or the automotive industry. Maybe in the States, this is something normal, but definitely in Egypt and other countries, I'm sure this is very novice. I'd love to see how this is going to transpire further towards, looking at young entrepreneurs who focus on these kind of sectors. We are going to see a lot of movement in terms of blue economy and green jobs, where I definitely feel that the trend is going to be led by women in these sectors. So you're talking the hospitality business, logistics business, certain changes in industry as the private sector starts to introduce technology, women who have moved forward into STEM education, and how they are going to be making use of this type of education into, heavy industry, shall we say. I think this is going to be very interesting. And that we do have a couple of my colleagues who also are very much involved in the TVET sector that I'm sure can give a lot more insight with regards to these kinds of new trends that are surfacing.
Yeah, so
Maria, without putting you on this, go ahead, Del.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you were talking about those trends, and it just kind of made me think, in regards to just my background in education, at least. Like, do you think globally many countries need to rethink formal education? And if so, what are some of the ways it should change?
Definitely, we need to rethink education. Absolutely. I think that it's time that we integrate a lot of different topics that one has not really focused on. It's time to integrate at a much earlier stage. I mean, even preschool stage. In Egypt, for example, we need to raise further awareness with regards to the importance of TVET. For example, it's not important to have a higher education degree. You need to integrate or not integrate, but change the image and perception of how women are being viewed. That women can be leaders, and I think we have all witnessed this in the recent presidential elections in the U.S. We have to be respectful of everyone. We need to start to integrate the varied cultures that exist around the world. And in order to kill any kind of stigmatism that has, long forever hindered how we look at things. I remember every time I traveled somewhere on business and people would know that I'm from Egypt, they cannot comprehend that we are a modern society. Or that, for example, I'm a Muslim. Comprehend how is it that I'm not veiled, and I speak the language, and I'm a fairly moderate kind of human being, I hope. So these are all things that are important to integrate. We need to start introducing concepts that today we are hearing about within the entrepreneurship ecosystem, like what's the difference between SMEs and being an entrepreneur? What is social entrepreneurship and humane entrepreneurship? And what do these mean? If that means, having extracurricular activities to embed and instill these types of ideas into, all these young minds, I'm sure that they're going to be amazing by the time they complete their educational pathways.
So I wanted to ask a quick question and about one of the biggest barriers we faced back when we were doing the work was parents, and parents coming to accept, provide permission for their girls to participate in some of the activities, let alone travel, to other countries. And so
yes.
How has working and convincing parents to have their girls study certain parts if they're in formal education, or take on some of these things like in agriculture, which has been traditionally male dominated. So help me understand the parent evolution in this.
Well, this doesn't exist anymore. I think that it's due to globalization and being able to, you have social media now. Internet is pretty much for free. You get to hear a lot of things that are happening, or a lot of events that are taking place. And at the same time, parents are starting to realize that their own contribution alone is no longer enough. So they are starting to look at the quickest routes or the fastest pathways in order to ensure that their kids are able to provide additional or necessary support. And this has been quite, beneficial. And you start to see this young generation of young girls who are becoming more persistent, who are sort of fighting their own battles because they believe in what it is that they want to do. They have a certain passion and they want to go for this passion. It's not the same as it were when we first started accessing all these communities and being and having to deal with this rejection of having a girl participate or do something or do whatever activities. So this is really the change that is being witnessed, I think.
That's great. We've got about 5 minutes or so left in this session, this part of our episode, and it's been, I mean, you really have shared a tremendous amount. Yeah. It's a lot for just to kind of take in. I know that Global 5 is part of other places around. Who make up the 5? There's yourself, and then Maria, who's in Argentina.
Yes, we have Argentina, we have the US, we have Indonesia, we have France, and we have Egypt. And of course, we're always looking to expand more countries, more people. It's that's why it's a network. It's open for everybody. But I think it would be interesting, maybe Eric, if you'd give the last few minutes to my colleagues.
Yeah, you bet.
We have Walid Quraish and Hamdi Ragab, who both in the Tibet sector and can definitely shed some light to what we have been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear from them. Hamdi, if you're okay with that, maybe go first for a minute or so, and then we can bring in the other folks.
No? Okay.
Or Walid, feel free.
Hi everyone. Hi Shoroke.
Hi Walid.
كله تمام الحمد لله. It's a pleasure to attend this nice presentation and the great initiative. So if we are talking about that, Tibet in general in Egypt, I heard Shoroke was saying also about the situation where the students or the graduates from Tibet always looking for continue studying to higher education. As you know, in Egypt, the system, there is schools where the general schools and the technical schools. So general schools always is the way to the university. You have to be in the general school to join university and colleges. But technical schools, there is doubt about you are going to continue to the university because the system is accepting, I don't know the percentage, but around 5% only from the technical schools graduates to join the university. And this may be creating a situation for the families and the graduates because for the social perception, they want to continue to have a higher education certificate, and this is very obvious in the Egyptian community. I think it's
so
not
let me ask
Egypt.
a quick question, Walid. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, it's happened. If I remember correctly, a technical school student, once they graduated, if they wanted to go on to university, they had to wait a year, right? They had to take a gap and then apply. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe that's the way it used to be. Is that still the case, or am I wrong about that?
You mean the technical schools, graduates from technical schools? So graduates from
if they wanted to go
schools,
to university, they had to wait a little bit.
Actually, it's not about waiting. They can join an institute for 2 years to get another certificate, and then the university is selecting only 5% only from the graduates they can join. So in this regards, you always lose your specialty. So maybe you are graduate from technical schools in printing industry, but while you are trying to join the university, you can forget about this specialty, and you can join about in something else. This is a problem. Yeah. A small percentage, and it's needed. Most of the families and the students, they are planning their education to get at the end a higher certificates. Mostly for the social perception. It's not about the science or something, or the profession, but at the end, it's the social perception lead them to this pathway. And this is make the education life circle very long, because I have to study like 10 years to be an engineer. And this is a very long time. Yani. So the point is, as Shoroke was saying, as that we need to make the perception of the technical education more better. But in the meantime, I think if the system a little bit changed to bring the technical education inside the higher education, like the colleges and universities, to have another pathway where the student can continue getting the certificate, but while he is in the workplace, he don't have to leave the workplace to get the certificate. And this example, I saw it in the UK system. It was very successful that the student could finish a level of technical education, and then he can go to join a job or something, or he can join a college, but as an apprentice. So he is working in a company, but in the meantime, he can join to get the certificate by entering the exam. And at the end, the skills are the same. He will take the same skills while he's in the workplace, and the same skills if he joined the college. This is, I think, a successful model. We don't have it in Egypt, but I think it's a very successful model where the students have the chance to get certificates, and in the meantime, they are getting salaries from their apprenticeship time. So this is one of the points I wanted to raise.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that model, and it's part of, honestly, it's one of the reasons why it was one of the conversations Delmar and I were having before we started the podcast, was that very thing that you just described about how young people here in the States and around the world, so many are not succeeding in the way that they could, because we keep forcing them only through one path, and only a small number of people, young people, do well in that path, and the rest are left to just kind of get lucky or figure it out or whatever. And as opposed to having a defined multiple pathways for young people to figure out who they are and their best way for to contribute their skills and livelihood. And that's kind of the conversation that started this whole podcast. So Thanks for bringing that model up, Walid.
Thank you.
We've got time for one more kind of bit of conversation before we wrap. Anybody else care to share? This whole area is like just the beginning part of our conversation. We love the fact that the Global 5 network has such reach around the world. While mine and Shoroke's relationship has been Egypt and Middle East centric, many of the things talked about and that Shoroke mentioned are global in nature. So Shoroke, do you have any other kind of just summary thoughts that you wanted to share before we conclude this part?
No, I think maybe one last thing that I'd love to see is how young people can start taking, initiatives similar to what you guys are doing at the moment, and we start introducing them to all these varied culture, and maybe even hearing their thoughts and ideas. It will be interesting. It will even be more interesting to see how they can start connecting with each other through their entrepreneurial perspective. So it's no longer that you're working within your community to support economic development, but rather you're actually crossing borders to do that same thing. So I think it will be a very interesting period of time over the coming few years. So thank you very much, Eric, and thank you, Delmar. This has
we've
been
got
great.
real quick. We've got a raised hand here, so let's. I don't want to miss out here. Ahmed, feel free to contribute.
Hello,
or,
yeah. First of all, thank you for this this event and this informative presentation from Mrs. Shoroke. It's Ahmed Ismail. I'm working in Plan International Egypt and project which work in strengthening women entrepreneurs in Egypt, in particular in carpet industry in Giza district. We obviously face a lot of resistance and community and local community. We're not working in just women, but we targeting the men and also boys and girls. We keen and we keeping engaged the men in the process of gender economic inclusion equality. It's and also we targeting and the community leaders and religious leader in the districts. So my question is about the local communities in Egypt has a lot of context, resistance context, like the keeping the women working in their communities. They have a lot of lack of mobility to go out their communities in like national events or national exhibitions or international exhibitions. So we think about, or I thought about how to bring the markets into the local communities in Egypt, especially in Upper Egypt. It has a lot of crafts or handicrafts there. So we think, or I think, especially in bringing the markets there in their communities, and instead of they go out their communities. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, Shoroke, do you have just a quick comment on that? Yeah, you bet.
I mean, Upper Egypt, we have our stories to share regarding Upper Egypt, believe me.
Yeah.
I think that your idea, ya Ahmed, is very interesting. And I think that definitely you can start doing that. One of the things, or one of the ways that we worked to eliminate this resistance. Of course, number one was making sure that we were very visible within the community, and we were able to visit homes and answered everybody's questions whenever they needed certain feedback or whatever, with the support, of course, of the community leaders, whomever they are. But we also started to target one governorate and another governorate. So we used to have those who are young people involved, or those involved in our projects, go and visit the opposite community, or a different governorate from theirs, and showcase that the work they have done to communicate with each other, see how they can support each other. And one of the great things about youth is that they're not like rigid like us. They're very easygoing. They, automatically, oh, are you on Facebook? Oh, are you on what's your number, and so on and so forth. And they start communicating and creating their own little groups. And that's how it begins. And then you start expanding one bit at a time, where you can maybe go to Cairo, Greater Cairo, or Alex, or those bigger governorates where they have handicrafts fairs or whatever taking place, and invite them to the community where you are, you want to have, or you want to host. This is one path that we took. And then the other path was, as you say, exchange. So we had people coming from a couple of African countries to visit Egypt, and meet their peers, and learn a lot, and about their expertise or experience with whatever initiative that we were doing. And you can definitely do the same. And maybe one of the added values given today is you have an online platform. So you can access however many communities you want, and host however many events you want online, starting with, setting up some 2-minute tutorials, for example, that of a similar product that is being produced from a different country. And this is how they start learning, how they start sharing experience. Bit by bit, we'll start seeing this barrier of no, I don't want, or no, I don't want my family to participate, or all of that slowly dissolving, because they'll start to feel comfortable to share their knowledge, or to share their products elsewhere, and they'll start to realize the added value of having something like the initiative that you're putting out there.
Yeah, and that's the whole kind of concept of positive peer pressure. You can't underestimate that. And this is a whole nother subject. Maybe it's this whole podcast, but I also wonder about just the continued emergence of young women in politics, in leadership, and in governing, and even just in just becoming leaders within their community, whether it's in a formal government structure or not. And I know that takes time, but that's really where change ultimately will become sustainable, in my opinion. That's my opinion, is once we have a far greater representation in our governments, with people from different backgrounds. So again, a whole nother show, not for today. Again,
Absolutely.
thank you to everybody who joined here. This podcast will be available here in the next 2 days. Once I do a little editing on the first part where Delmar and I were, before you all came, I got to cut out some stuff. We made some mistakes. So there's a blooper reel later. But yeah, so we'll do some editing just in that regard. And then the full episode will be out and available on Castos, but we'll put it out in other social media here in the next couple days. And again, we appreciate everybody taking some time to listen, to contribute and share. Shoroke, especially, thank you to you for organizing folks to be able to join. It added a whole different dynamic to this, something for us to consider for future episodes for sure. And, the Global 5 Network, check it out on LinkedIn and continue to follow its progress. And if you know folks that want to be a part of it, reach out. They're willing and willing to bring
Absolutely.
you guys on. Yeah. So again,
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much, and we will be in touch. Delmar, how cool is that to be able to have folks joining us and contributing to that conversation?
Yeah, that was really nice. That was really, really nice. Actually, Waleed had hit on something, and I actually wrote it down as we talked, as he was talking, and we were reflecting back to our conversation, and really the word that comes to mind for me is choice. And we talk about how choice is such a great thing, and we're a little bit behind in regards to our infrastructure to provide choice for young people right now. And I think we're playing the catch-up game from just like I said, infrastructure makeup. And that's an area I hope that we begin to address. But continuing on with that, the other piece that we didn't really get to talk about is that money really drives all of this. And we didn't really get a chance to talk about funding, but that's something I would have liked to have talked about.
No, for sure. And it's interesting to me also, part of the conversation was it's one thing to then have young people have these multiple pathways, maybe in education and girls in particular. It's another thing for them to then be valued by employers and sectors to then hire them. And so Ahmed at the end with his point, and I thought that was pretty cool, and I haven't heard a lot of this, I'm sure it's happening, I just haven't heard about it, was having a project specifically focused on young men and getting them to accept young women into these sectors and how it benefits them ultimately to do that. I thought that was, it seems logical, but I just, when he said it, it just struck me as like, oh yes, that's probably important too.
Exactly, yeah.
And in fact, I don't know if you picked up, but where he's doing it is in Giza. And Giza is where the pyramids are. And that is such a tourist area, and they rely so much on tourism. And I can tell you from visiting there more than a few times, it is all male dominated in terms of tourism. Shop owners, food, handicrafts, interpreters, all of it, all male dominated. At least it had been. And so it's interesting that that's in particularly the area that he's working. So anyway, great stuff. And again, great energy to bring other people on to listen in, ask questions, contribute. It is something I think with future episodes, we can consider which ones make sense maybe to do something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. It's great added, value to all that we're doing.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So every episode, we do a community spotlight. And this episode, we had chosen Goals for Girls, which is this soccer or football, depending on your perspective, way in which brings young girls in to teach about leadership and other soft skills, and teamwork and inclusion, and all these important components to building young girls' esteem and their belief that they need to contribute and can contribute to their community in interesting ways. And so we were able to record a segment about that a few days ago, and we want to share that with you now. And I think it ties in nicely to the theme of this episode.
Girls came to be together from all over India and the US. We learned about leadership building from G4G trainers as well as the other girls at the summit. As a Goals for Girls intern, I was able to facilitate some of the sessions at the summit and take more of a leadership role. Goals for Girls has given me the tools to be a better leader, and now I'm able to teach other girls and help empower them to be leaders as well. The main thing we want girls to take away from this summit is that they are strong, intelligent, and capable of making a positive change in their own lives first, and therefore contributing to making a difference in their communities.
We are joined now by Lola Ogunbote from Goals for Girls, who's part of our feature, as you've just seen in the short video on Goals for Girls. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
Absolutely. I've been a fan of Goals for Girls and what you all have been accomplishing for some time. It's great to get a chance to meet you. So tell us, how did you get involved for Goals for Girls?
It's an interesting story, actually. I was thinking about getting involved in female empowerment. I was a lawyer by profession before, and I got to a point where I wanted to change, and I knew that football or soccer for our American friends was something that I was very, very passionate about. So I was researching names of organizations, and I came across Goals for Girls. I sent an email at the time to the executive director to say that I wanted to learn more about the organization, and we kept in touch. An opportunity then arose for me to join voluntarily one of their summits in Utah in 2008. So I was able to participate and see the program in action, and it was just phenomenal. Such an impactful experience for me to see how football can change the lives of so many girls. We then kept an open dialogue, and 6-8 months ago now, an opportunity came for me to come on board as an employee, and I definitely jumped at the chance. So I guess there's a lot to do with networking and luck and opportunity all meeting itself at the same time.
Absolutely. It's funny how we all come to this profession. Very few of us seem to have gone to school for it. We just
Right.
come to it because we care. So for those that are joining us aren't familiar with exactly what Goals for Girls is, clearly it's young women coming together and learning a lot of skills outside of football, but also using football to maybe re-emphasize some of those skills. So just kind of describe it if you could.
Yeah, Goals for Girls is an organization that uses the power of football to teach girls leadership. One of the USPs for what we do is that we then use that leadership to inspire community change. So when girls participate on our program, they go home with a Goals for Girls challenge. And that is to find ways that they can make a positive change in their communities. And so during our summits, we have time for classroom sessions where we talk about leadership, empowerment, education, self-worth. And then we also have football games that we play for the girls to showcase their talents, for those that are new to develop and just to have fun around the game that we will love. They then focus on a challenge that's in line with the SDG goals. And we ask them to think about their communities, what's going on, what could be changed, and how can you help? And we support them in their projects. We then have check-in points further down the line to make sure that they're okay, or if they need any support from us, that we can provide it for them. And so that's in essence what we're about, providing leadership for young girls through sport.
Absolutely. One of the things that having worked in more traditionally aligned communities is the ability that you all have had in getting parents engaged, particularly to, I hate to use the word allow, their girls to participate in this way. And so tell us about how you've all been able to overcome some of the obstacles that some of us reach in trying to engage young women in some of our programs.
Yeah, I think to start off with, it's important to let people know that, we have three main regions at the moment. We're in the US, we're in India, and we're in South Africa. And of course, all of those regions have different views on female participation in sport. We're quite fortunate in the US that the women's game is probably one of the largest in terms of soccer being a female sport, which is very different from where I am in London, where it's predominantly a male sport. In other regions, there's a big stigma against girls playing in sport, and particularly playing football, given that the uniform requires shorts and short sleeves, which in some parts of the world is seen as a taboo and is not regularly seen. So we are trying to get these girls to use their voice in a safe way to participate in that. And what we do is we try and show and educate parents and mentors that this is a great way to channel the energy that these young girls have, and that they're able to express themselves through sport. And so that's something that we try and do and make sure that it's done in a safe way, that's not going to put them in harm's way, and also that we're collaborative with mentors and parents. We do workshops with them and make sure that they're in the know about what we're doing with their girls and how it really can change their lives.
Perfect. And it is not necessarily as simple as you put it. It requires a lot of trust and engagement. And I certainly, again, admire how you all have been able to continually do that in the communities that you've participated. So we saw the brief video on Bangalore, the summit in 2020. That was the last kind of in-person summit that you all were able to have. You were fortunate to even get it in 2020 before the COVID hit and kind of disturbed a lot of what we all have been doing. As you come into the next summit, and I'm sure it's well underway being planned, how much will you all think about the isolation that's occurred over the past year when you implement and bring your kind of teaching and classroom work with the young girls into, how much would that be kind of front and center this time as opposed to what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think for a lot of organizations and a lot of individuals, COVID has changed the way that we operate and how we deliver our programming. And you mentioned Bangalore. We just last month had a digital summit with our participants in India.
Right.
And of course, because we're unable to meet in person, we're bringing them together online. And one of the topics that we chose to focus on, which we sent a survey out for the girls to tell us what they wanted, one of the top picks was around mental health. And so we engaged with experts in the field in India who were able to come and do mental health and well-being training and session. We talked about self-talk and self-image, how we see ourselves in comparison to how the world sees us, and how we can try and change that narrative for good. We talked about, meditation and breathing and visualization, and just to give them tools that for so many girls at that age have never been forced to consider in the same way before. And you mentioned isolation, and we've got teams all over India, all over South Africa, and all over the US. And so what's so powerful is being able to bring them together. We have had a team who have been unable to meet at their academy for the whole of the year, and our session last month was the first time they were able to see other girls.
Wow.
In e-person, I'd put it.
Right.
but it was so powerful to unite them. We had over 200 girls. We had coaches, we had guest speakers that were phenomenal to come and share their expertise. So that's how we've done it. We've tried to focus on the messaging that they want, and try and give them the tools to kind of stay mentally strong during what's been a tough time for us all, quite frankly.
Wow, that's amazing that you were able to get that kind of number of folks to participate. And it doesn't surprise me that it's the first time some of peers have seen each other. So good for you all for being able to continue that and stay connected. As we know, all young people just need to have that caring, consistent adult presence and really have an opportunity to belong. Those are such fundamental tenets to youth development, and good for you all to continue to, figure out ways to keep that going so that the young people are in a position to thrive.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are some folks that are interested and have some young girls in their lives and would be interested in learning more and maybe even participating in this. How does one go about getting more information to find out more about the program?
Yeah, we engage a lot on our social media platforms. You can find us at Goals for Girls, and that's for the letter FOR rather than the number. We have a website, www.goalsforgirls.org, which outlines our mission, our programs. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter on all of those handles. So we're trying to make sure that we have a presence, and we welcome everybody to check out what we're doing and engage with us online. We also have an online library session for those who are able to get access to that post summits. If you participate in our online summits, we have an access to an online library which has hours of activities for girls to do in this isolating time, at home, with friends, with peers. So that's also available via the website too.
Perfect. It's just very exciting to have you be able to share this with everybody today. Again, Lola, thanks so much for what it is that you're doing. Thanks for your time today. And we look forward to maybe digging a little deeper in a future episode where we look about with particularly sport and the way sport is being brought together around youth development in general. And I think we might be able to go a little deeper with some of the work that you all have been able to do. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
It's pretty cool to check out what Goals for Girls is doing.
Yeah, that was awesome. It actually reminded me of when we were actually working together. I was working on a project called Sports as a Hook. And, we worked a lot at that point in time with America Scores. And I know that's a little bit different from Goals for Girls, but again, same concept where you take sports and you try to implement some youth development practices within that sport as a hook there. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reminded of that too. And maybe there's an opportunity, like I alluded to in my conversation with Lola, that maybe we can do an episode where we focus on those strategies. They're still very real, clearly, and working.
Yeah.
So maybe we can resurface some of our old work and just kind of check in on where it is. While we had this area, we continue to take in feedback and questions and comments. And because of that, outside of the fact that the viewers have noticed that this clock always has the same time, they really should get a battery. So the other than things like that are so helpful, we get suggestions on topics. And this next episode is going to be on, they're all serious topics, but this one's going to be on a very serious topic around youth and isolation and mental health, and how, again, the pandemic and just social isolation and the whole host of things have only made a challenging issue even worse. And so that's going to be our next episode.
Yeah,
We,
just to bring this kind of full circle and beginning to wrap this up. We talked a lot today about uh, women's access to things, and thought it was great that the spotlight and our guests kind of hit on these issues, and it was kind of cool to have. We didn't plan that, but it was kind of cool to just that was kind of the theme today, obviously. So definitely something that we probably will dive into a little more in one of our future episodes. But it was really cool because I believe we just began to scratch the surface.
yeah, and our guest next week will be David, or next week, next episode will be David Berman, who's the director of the Indiana Suicide Prevention Program here, and a statewide organization. He's connected quite a bit nationally to mental health and young people. And so it'll be a very important conversation we'll have with him. And again, hopefully be meaningful to those of you that have stuck with this hour-long special episode of Eliminate the Gap. So till next time, we'll see you, and keep on keeping on.